The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep hum. Representatives from 12 different alien species walked through, their footsteps echoing in the vast hall. The air felt heavy with worry and fear. Emergency sessions. Like this one meant only one thing: trouble was coming. Ambassador Krex of the Zenthari stood at the center podium, his blue skin looking pale under the bright lights. His forearms moved nervously as he waited for everyone to take their seats. The Zenthari were known as tough warriors, but today Krex looked scared. "Friends and allies," Krex began, his voice carrying across the silent chamber. "We face the greatest threat our galaxy has ever known. The Vorthak Empire has declared war on all free species." Gasps and worried whispers filled the room. The Vorthak were legendary for their cruelty and massive fleets. They had been quiet for 50 years, building their forces in the dark corners of space. Now they were ready to strike. 3 star systems have already fallen, Krex continued. The colonies on Zerion Prime, the mining worlds of the Kelta Belt, and the peaceful farming planet of Greenhaven, all destroyed or enslaved. The Vorthak fleet numbers 10,000 ships. A tall, thin creature with 6 eyes stood up. This was Speaker Vel of the aquatic Murdai. "What do they want?" she asked, though her voice suggested she already knew the answer. "Complete surrender," Krex replied. "Join their empire as slaves or be destroyed. They have given us 30 standard days to decide." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Some species wanted to fight, others wanted to run and hide. The insectoid hive buzzed loudly among themselves, while the crystalline Siltech made musical sounds that meant they were upset. "We must unite our fleets," declared Commander Threk of the Hive, his mandibles clicking. "Together we might have a chance." "My people can offer 500 bioships," he continued. "They are fast and can heal damage in battle." Admiral Nara of the Zenthari nodded. "The Zenthari fleet will contribute 300 heavy cruisers. Our weapons are powerful and our shields are strong." One by one, each species offered what ships they could spare. The Merdai promised 200 deep space vessels designed for long fights. The Siltech would bring 100 ships with advanced energy weapons. Even the smaller species pledged their modest fleets. As the numbers grew, hope began to return to the chamber. Nearly 2,000 ships in total, not as many as the Vorthak had, but perhaps enough to make them think twice about attacking. Finally, all eyes turned to the human representative. Ambassador Dohyun sat quietly in his chair, wearing a simple dark suit. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic community, having joined only 20 years ago, but they had proven themselves to be clever and resourceful allies. "Ambassador Dohyun," Krex said formally, "what can Earth contribute to our defense?" Dohyun stood slowly. He was a middle-aged man with gray hair and calm eyes. When he spoke, his voice was steady and sure. "Earth will send 1 ship." The chamber fell completely silent. For a moment, nobody moved or spoke. Then the whisper started, growing louder and more confused. "1 ship?" Speaker Vel asked, her 6 eyes blinking in disbelief. "Surely you mean 1 fleet." "No," Dohyun replied calmly. "1 ship. The vessel is called the Indomitable. She will meet your forces at the Kepler Junction." Commander Threk's mandibles clicked angrily. "This is no time for jokes, human. We face 10,000 enemy ships." "I am not joking," Dohyun said. His voice remained calm, but there was something in his eyes that made several aliens step back. "Earth will send the Indomitable." The chamber exploded in angry voices. Some species accused humans of being cowards. Others suggested that Earth had secretly made a deal with the Vorthak. A few wondered if humans had simply given up hope. Through it all, Dohyun stood quietly, waiting for the noise to die down. When it finally did, he spoke again. "I understand your concerns, but I assure you, when the time comes, the Indomitable will do her part." "Her part?" Admiral Nara asked, her voice full of disbelief. 1 ship against 10,000? What can 1 ship possibly do? Dohyun looked directly at her. "You will understand when you see her." The meeting continued for several more hours, but the mood had changed completely. Species that had been willing to work together now argued among themselves. Some wanted to exclude Earth from their plans entirely. Others worried that humanity's betrayal meant the alliance was doomed. As delegates began to leave the chamber, small groups formed to discuss private plans. The Zenthari and Hive talked about leading the main battle fleet. The Merdai and Siltech considered forming a separate strike force. Everyone seemed to be making plans that did not include humans. Krex approached Do-Yun as the human ambassador prepared to leave. The Zenthari's forearms were crossed, a sign of deep displeasure. Do-Yun, we have been allies for 20 years, Krex said quietly. Please tell me the truth. Has Earth abandoned us? The human ambassador turned to face him. For the first time that day, Do-Yun smiled slightly. The Indomitable will be at the Kepler Junction as promised, he said. Earth has not abandoned anyone. But one ship, Krex began. You asked what Earth could contribute, Do-Yun interrupted gently. I told you, one ship. Against 10,000 Vorthak vessels? Your ship will be destroyed in minutes. Do-Hyun's smile grew a little wider, but his eyes remained serious. You are assuming that all ships are equal, my friend. That bigger numbers always win. Are they not? Krex asked, confused. You will see, Do-Hyun replied. The Indomitable is unique. The human ambassador walked toward the exit, but stopped and turned back one more time. Krex, how many ships did it take to destroy the 3 systems that have already fallen? The Zenthari thought for a moment. Intelligence reports suggest the Vorthak used their full fleet, 10,000 ships for each attack. 10,000 ships to destroy defenseless colonies? Do-Hyun shook his head. That seems like overkill to me. The Vorthak like to make examples, Krex replied. They want to show their power. Yes, Do-Hyun said softly. They do like to show their power. The question is, what happens when they meet something more powerful? Before, Krex could ask what he meant. The human ambassador was gone, leaving the Zenthari standing alone in the empty chamber, wondering what secrets Earth was hiding. The Kepler Junction stretched across empty space like a vast parking lot for starships. 2,000 vessels from 12 different species floated in careful formations, their running lights creating a constellation of colors against the black void. It was the largest Allied fleet ever assembled, representing the combined military might of the galactic community. Admiral Nara stood on the bridge of her flagship, the massive Zenthari dreadnought Star Cleaver. Through the viewing ports, she could see the impressive sight of so many different ship designs working together. The insectoid hive vessels looked like giant bugs with their organic curves and multiple weapon pods. The crystalline Siltech ships gleamed like jewels, their surfaces reflecting starlight in beautiful patterns. Admiral, her communications officer called out. The Merdai deep space cruisers have finished their patrol sweep, no sign of Vorthak scouts. Good, Nara replied. And the human ship? The officer checked his displays. Still no contact from Earth forces, Admiral. It had been 3 days since the emergency council meeting. Every other species had arrived on schedule, bringing their promised ships and crews. But there was no sign of the single vessel that Earth had pledged to send. Commander Threk of the Hive had been the most vocal about humanity's absence. His bioship had docked with the Star Cleaver that morning so he could meet with the other fleet commanders. The humans have abandoned us, Threk buzzed angrily, his mandibles clicking. I told you we could not trust them. Perhaps their ship was delayed, suggested Captain Lyra of the Siltech. Her crystalline form chimed softly as she spoke. Humans are known to be punctual. Or perhaps they decided that one ship was not enough and went home, Speaker Vel added. The Merdai representative had traveled from her underwater command ship to join the meeting. Admiral Nara studied the tactical displays showing their fleet positions. Even without the human contribution, they had assembled an impressive force. But against 10,000 Vorthak ships, impressive might not be enough. We proceed with the battle plan as discussed, she decided, with or without Earth's ship. That afternoon, long-range sensors finally detected an approaching vessel, The communications officer called out excitedly, "Admiral, we have a ship arriving from the direction of Earth." "Finally," Nara muttered. "Put it on the main screen." The viewing port filled with the image of space, and there, growing larger as it approached, was a single ship. But as it came closer, confused murmurs spread across the bridge. "That is the human contribution?" asked the tactical officer, staring at the display. The ship was sleek and modern-looking, but it was small, much smaller than anyone had expected. It looked like a frigate. The kind of vessel used for patrols and escort duties, not major battles. Compared to the massive star cleaver, it looked like a child's toy. "Run a detailed scan," Nara ordered. "Scanning now," the sensor operator replied. After a moment, he looked up with confusion. "Admiral, the readings are strange." "Strange how?" "The ship appears to be about 200 meters long, standard frigate class, but the mass readings are much higher than they should be, and there are sections of the hull that our sensors cannot penetrate." Across the fleet, similar conversations were taking place on every ship. The alien crews stared in disbelief at the modest human vessel. Some laughed, thinking it was a joke. Others felt insulted, believing that Earth was not taking the threat seriously. "Incoming transmission from the human ship," the communications officer announced. "Put it through," Nara said. A calm male voice filled the bridge. "This is Captain Minho of the Earth vessel Indomitable, requesting permission to dock with the Star Cleaver." Admiral Nara looked around her bridge at the confused faces of her crew. "Permission granted, Captain Minho. Bay 7 is available." An hour later, the human delegation arrived in the Star Cleaver's main conference room. Captain Minho was a young-looking man with dark hair and serious eyes. With him came Chief Engineer Yuna, a woman with short hair and oil-stained hands, and Tactical Officer Jiwan, who carried a small computer tablet and said nothing. The alien commanders were already seated around the large table. Admiral Nara tried to hide her disappointment, but the other species were less diplomatic. "This is your mighty warship?" Commander Threk buzzed loudly. "I have seen cargo shuttles bigger than your vessel." Captain Minho sat down calmly. "The Indomitable may not look like much, but she will serve her purpose." "Her purpose?" Speaker. Fell's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. "Captain, we face 10,000 enemy ships. What purpose can one small frigate possibly serve?" "We appreciate Earth's gesture," Admiral Nara said carefully. "But perhaps it would be better if your ship remained in the rear with the supply vessels." Chief Engineer Yuna looked up from the technical manual she had been reading. "The Indomitable is not a supply ship." "Then what is she?" Captain Lyra asked, her crystalline form chiming with curiosity. "She is exactly what Earth sent to help with your Vorthak problem," Captain Minho replied. The room erupted in angry voices. Commander Threk accused humans of being cowards who sent toys to a real battle. Speaker Vel wondered aloud if Earth had secretly joined the Vorthak Empire. Several other commanders suggested that the human ship should go home before it got destroyed. Through it all, the 3 humans sat quietly, listening to every complaint and accusation. Captain Minho's expression never changed. Chief Engineer Yuna went back to reading her manual. Tactical Officer Jiwan made notes on her tablet. Finally, when the shouting died down, Captain Minho spoke again. "I understand your concerns. The Indomitable does not look impressive, but I assure you, when the time comes, she will do her part." "Her part in what?" Admiral Nara asked. "Captain, please help me understand. What can one small ship do against the largest fleet in galactic history?" Captain Minho was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was very soft. "Admiral, have you ever wondered why Earth only built one ship like the Indomitable? Because you are a young species with limited resources." "Commander," Threk suggested mockingly. "No," Chief Engineer Yuna said without looking up from her manual. "Because one was enough." The alien commanders looked at each other in confusion. Enough for what? What were the humans talking about? "I think," Admiral Nara said slowly, "that we should assign the Indomitable to the reserve formation. Away from the main battle where she will be safer." Captain Minho nodded. As you wish, Admiral. The Indomitable will take whatever position you think is best. As the meeting ended and the humans prepared to return to their ship, Tactical Officer Jiwan finally spoke for the first time. Captain Minho, should I begin the preparation sequence? Not yet, Minho replied. Wait for my signal. What preparation? Admiral Nara asked. Captain Minho smiled for the first time since arriving. Just some routine checks, Admiral. We want to make sure the Indomitable is ready when you need her. The humans left the conference room, leaving behind a group of very confused alien commanders. Outside the Star Cleaver's viewing ports, the small human frigate floated peacefully among the great warships of the Allied fleet, looking completely harmless and ordinary. None of the aliens noticed the almost invisible panels that had begun to slide open along the Indomitable's hull, or the faint energy readings that were starting to build deep inside the ship's core. The Vorthak fleet arrived exactly when their intelligence reports had predicted. 10,000 ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation, their dark hulls blocking out the stars like a moving wall of death. At the center of this massive armada was the flagship Dominion's Wrath, a vessel so enormous it could have served as a small moon. On the bridge of the Star Cleaver, Admiral Nara watched the enemy fleet take position. Her forearms moved quickly across the control panels as she coordinated the Allied response. 2,000 ships against 10,000. The odds were not good, but they would fight anyway. All ships report ready for battle, her communications officer announced. What about the human vessel? Nara asked. The Indomitable is holding position in the reserve formation, as ordered. Admiral Nara nodded. At least the small human ship would be safe there, away from the main fighting. When this battle was over, if any of them survived, she would recommend that Earth build bigger ships next time. A massive transmission burst came from the Vorthak flagship, broadcasting on all frequencies. The image that appeared on the Star Cleaver's main screen was terrifying. Admiral Vex of the Vorthak Empire stood nearly 3 meters tall, his gray skin covered in battle scars. 4 red eyes glowed in his skull-like head, and his mouth was full of sharp teeth. Lesser species. Vex's voice boomed across space. You see the might of the Vorthak Empire. 10,000 ships of war, each one capable of destroying entire worlds. You have 1 standard hour to surrender and join our empire as slaves. Refuse, and you will all die here today. The transmission ended, leaving the Allied fleet in tense silence. Admiral Nara looked around her bridge at the worried faces of her crew. An hour to decide between slavery and death, not much of a choice. Admiral, Captain Lyra's crystalline voice came through the communication system from her Siltech vessel. My people vote to fight. We will not bow to these monsters. The Hive agrees, Commander Threk buzzed angrily. We would rather die, free than live as slaves. One by one, each species confirmed their decision. They would fight even knowing they would probably lose. It was better to die with honor than live without freedom. As the hour counted down, Admiral Nara made her final preparations. The Allied fleet spread into battle formation, with the heaviest ships in front and the smaller vessels providing support. Deep in the rear, almost forgotten, the tiny human frigate waited quietly. Time is up, the tactical officer announced. All ships, Admiral Nara broadcast to the entire fleet. Today we fight not just for our own species, but for the freedom of all life in the galaxy. Whatever happens, we will make the Vorthak pay for every meter of space. The battle began with a massive barrage from the Vorthak fleet. Thousands of energy beams and missiles streaked across the void, lighting up space like deadly fireworks. The Allied ships returned fire, their weapons creating brilliant flashes against the enemy hulls, but it became clear very quickly that they were badly outmatched. The Vorthak ships were not only more numerous but also more heavily armed and armored. For every enemy vessel destroyed, the Allies lost 3 or 4 ships. The Star Cleaver shook violently as Vorthak plasma cannons struck her shields. Admiral, Nara gripped her command chair as damage reports flooded in from across the ship. Port shield generators are failing, the engineering officer called out. We have fires on decks 7 through 12. Through the chaos of battle, Nara watched as Allied ships exploded one after another. A Hive bioship tried to ram a Vorthak cruiser, but was cut in half by defensive fire. 3 Merdai vessels worked together to destroy a single enemy destroyer, but were immediately targeted by 5 more Vorthak ships. "Admiral," her communications officer shouted over the noise of battle. "The Siltech formation is breaking apart. Captain Lyra's ship has been destroyed." Nara felt her heart sink. Captain Lyra had been a good friend and a brave warrior. How many more would die before this hopeless battle ended? The Star Cleaver took another massive hit, this one penetrating her damaged shields. The bridge lights flickered and several control panels exploded in showers of sparks. "Hull breach on Deck 5, the damage control officer reported. "We are losing atmosphere." "Transfer command to auxiliary control," Nara ordered. "Prepare to abandon ship." As the crew began evacuation procedures, the tactical officer called out in surprise. "Admiral, I am receiving a transmission from the human ship." "Put it through," Nara said, wondering what the humans wanted to say before they all died. Captain Minho's calm voice filled the damaged bridge. "All ships, this is the Indomitable. We are moving to engage primary targets." Admiral Nara stared at the communication panel in disbelief. "Captain Minho, stay in formation. You cannot help us by getting your ship destroyed." But the human ship was already moving. On the tactical display, the small dot representing the Indomitable began accelerating toward the massive Vorthak fleet. It looked like suicide. One tiny frigate charging into the teeth of 10,000 enemy ships. "The humans have lost their minds," Commander Threk buzzed over the comm system. "They are going to get themselves killed for nothing." Admiral Nara watched helplessly as the human ship flew straight into the heart of the enemy formation. Vorthak vessels turned their weapons toward this new target, preparing to swat the small ship like an annoying insect. But something strange began to happen. As the Indomitable flew deeper into the enemy fleet, panels along her hull started sliding away. The ship's outline began to change, growing larger and more complex. What had looked like a simple frigate was transforming into something completely different. "What is happening to their ship?" the sensor operator asked, staring at his displays in confusion. On the main screen, they could see the Indomitable continuing to change. Weapon systems that had been hidden inside the hull emerged and locked into position. The ship's rear section extended, revealing massive engine arrays. Additional armor plating unfolded to protect vital systems. "Admiral," the sensor operator's voice was filled with awe. "I am reading energy signatures unlike anything in our databases. Whatever that ship really is, it is not a frigate." In the middle of the Vorthak fleet, Admiral Vex was having similar thoughts. The small human ship that had seemed like easy prey was now approaching his formation, and his sensors were detecting power levels that seemed impossible. "All ships, target that vessel," Vex ordered. "Destroy it immediately." Hundreds of Vorthak ships turned their weapons toward the Indomitable. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around the human vessel, creating a deadly storm of fire. But the human ship flew through the barrage as if the weapons could not touch her. Some kind of shimmering barrier deflected the incoming fire, sending Vorthak missiles spinning harmlessly into space. "Impossible," Admiral Vex growled, his red eyes burning with anger. "What kind of technology is this?" He was about to find out. The Indomitable had finished her transformation and was now 3 times her original size. Weapon ports opened along her hull like the eyes of some great beast awakening from sleep. Deep inside the ship, systems that had been built using technologies beyond galactic understanding came online. Captain Minho's voice rang out across all frequencies, calm and clear. "This is Captain Minho of the Earth vessel Indomitable. To all Vorthak ships, you have 30 seconds to surrender or we will open fire." The laughter that came from Admiral Vex was like the sound of breaking glass. "One ship demands the surrender of our entire fleet? Humans are even more insane than I thought." 20 seconds, Captain Minho continued counting. "Destroy that ship now," Vex screamed at his gunners. 10 seconds. Even more Vorthak vessels opened fire, creating a wall of destructive energy that should have vaporized any ship in the galaxy. 5 seconds. The human ship continued flying through the barrage, completely unharmed. "Time is up," Captain Minho said quietly. The Indomitable fired her first shot. The first shot from the Indomitable was like nothing anyone had ever seen before. A beam of pure energy, brighter than a star, reached out and touched a Vorthak heavy cruiser. The massive enemy ship did not explode. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there. The next moment there was only empty space where it had been. On the bridge of the Star Cleaver, Admiral Nara and her crew stared in shocked silence. The sensor displays showed no debris, no explosion, no trace that a ship had ever been there. It was as if the Vorthak cruiser had been erased from reality. What kind of weapon was that? The tactical officer whispered. Before anyone could answer, the Indomitable fired again, and again. Each shot reached out across impossible distances to touch another Vorthak ship, and each target simply vanished. In the space of 30 seconds, 20 enemy vessels had been completely destroyed. Chief Engineer Yuna's voice came through the communication system, calm and professional. All systems green. Planetary siege cannons online. Fleet killer missiles armed. Dimensional shields at maximum. Admiral Nara felt her 4 hearts skip a beat. Planetary siege cannons. Those were weapons designed to destroy entire worlds. What was the human ship? In the middle of the Vorthak formation, panic was beginning to spread. Ships that had been in perfect battle order started breaking formation as captains tried to get away from the deadly human vessel. All ships maintain position. Admiral Vex screamed over the communication channels. It is only one ship. But his own officers were starting to look worried. The sensors on the Dominion's Wrath were detecting energy readings that broke every known law of physics. Whatever the humans had brought to this battle, it was not from any technology in the galactic databases. The Indomitable continued her deadly work. Tactical Officer Jiwan's voice joined the communications as she coordinated the attack with machine-like precision. Sector 7 clear. Moving to secondary targets. Target lock acquired on heavy destroyer group. The human ship turned toward a formation of 12 Vorthak destroyers that were trying to flank the Allied fleet. The enemy ships opened fire with everything they had, but their weapons could not even scratch the Indomitable's shields. Fleet killer missiles away, Jiwan announced. What emerged from the human ship were not ordinary missiles. These were sleek, intelligent weapons that moved like living things through space. They dodged enemy fire, weaved through defensive barriers, and struck their targets with impossible precision. The 12 Vorthak destroyers exploded simultaneously, their hulls torn apart by weapons that seemed to ignore armor and shields completely. Impossible, Admiral Vex muttered, watching his fleet being destroyed by a single enemy ship. What are these humans? On the Star Cleaver, Admiral Nara was asking herself the same question. The small frigate that had arrived 3 days ago was now revealed as the most powerful warship anyone had ever seen. But how had the humans built such a thing? And why had they hidden its true nature? Admiral, her communications officer called out. The Indomitable is requesting tactical data on all remaining Vorthak ships. Send them everything we have, Nara ordered immediately. The human ship was moving through the enemy fleet like a shark. Through a school of fish. Everywhere it went, Vorthak ships died. Not just died, they were completely obliterated by weapons that worked beyond anyone's understanding. Captain Minho's voice came through the comm system again. Allied fleet, please move to safe distance. We are about to engage the enemy flagship. Admiral. Nara looked at her tactical display. The Indomitable was flying straight toward the massive Dominion's Wrath, the largest and most heavily armed ship in the Vorthak fleet. Captain Minho, she broadcast urgently, that ship is 15 kilometers long. It has armor designed to withstand planet-killing weapons. Understood, Minho replied calmly. Moving to attack position now. The Dominion's Wrath was indeed a monster of a ship. It carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, and its shields could withstand direct hits from nuclear weapons. Admiral Vex had used it to conquer dozens of worlds. All weapons, target the human ship, Vex ordered. Every gun, every missile, everything we have. The massive flagship opened fire with weapons that lit up space like a second sun. Energy beams thick as city blocks reached out toward the approaching Indomitable. Missiles the size of buildings streaked through the void. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon in half, but the human ship flew through the barrage without even slowing down. Her shields absorbed impossible amounts of energy and kept functioning perfectly. Whatever technology protected the Indomitable, it was far beyond anything the Vorthak possessed. "Sir," one of Vex's officers said nervously, "our weapons are having no effect." "I can see that," Vex snarled. "Where did these humans get such technology?" Chief Engineer Yuna answered that question without meaning to. Her voice came through the comm channels as she spoke to her own crew. "Reactor core at 90%. Dimensional manipulation systems functioning normally. Reality anchor is stable." Reality anchor? Dimensional manipulation? Admiral Nara had never heard of such things. What kind of science were the humans using? The Indomitable had reached optimal firing range for her largest weapons. Captain Minho's voice was calm as always. "Target locked. Firing main cannon." What happened next would be talked about in every corner of the galaxy for generations to come. The Indomitable's main weapon fired a beam of energy that seemed to tear a hole in space itself. It struck the Dominion's wrath directly in the center, and the massive flagship simply folded in on itself like paper being crumpled. The ship that had terrorized worlds did not explode. It collapsed, its 15 kilometers of length compressed into a sphere of twisted metal that spun slowly in space before finally breaking apart. Admiral Vex's final transmission was a scream of pure terror. What kind of monsters are these humans? But the battle was not over yet. Thousands of Vorthak ships remained, and they were all trying to escape now. But the Indomitable was faster than any ship in their fleet. "No survivors," Captain Minho said quietly. "These invaders threatened our friends. That was a mistake." The human ship began hunting down the fleeing enemy vessels with systematic precision. Her advanced sensors could track ships trying to hide behind asteroids or enter hyperspace. Her weapons could reach across vast distances to destroy targets that thought they were safe. Tactical Officer Jiwan's voice continued providing updates. "Enemy Formation Charlie destroyed. Formation Delta retreating to Sector 9. Intercepting now." One by one, the Vorthak ships died. Some tried to fight. Others tried to run, but none escaped. The Indomitable hunted them all down with patient determination. The Allied fleet could only watch in amazement as the small human ship accomplished what their combined forces could never have done. A fleet of 10,000 enemy ships was being destroyed by a single vessel that had pretended to be a simple frigate. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out in wonder, "I am detecting massive energy buildups from the human ship. I think she is preparing to use some kind of area effect weapon." On the viewing screen, they could see the Indomitable hovering in the center of what remained of the Vorthak fleet. Panels along her hull were glowing with fierce light, and space itself seemed to shimmer around her. Captain Minho's voice came through one final time. "All Allied ships, please close your eyes and look away from the Indomitable. This next part is going to be very bright." Admiral Nara quickly gave the order, and across the Allied fleet, viewing screens shut down and crew members covered their eyes. Even through closed eyelids and darkened screens, the light that followed was almost blinding. When it finally faded, and they could look again, the Vorthak fleet was gone. All of it. 10,000 ships reduced to nothing but drifting particles of dust and metal. Where once a mighty armada had darkened the stars, now there was only empty space and debris. The Indomitable floated peacefully in the middle of it all, her hull already beginning to fold back into its harmless frigate configuration. The transformation that had revealed her true nature was now reversing itself. In the sudden silence that followed, Admiral Nara realized that the galaxy had just changed forever. Humanity had been hiding secrets that made them the most powerful species anyone had ever encountered, and they had used that power to save their friends. The conference room aboard the Starcleaver had been hastily repaired after the battle. Broken panels were covered with temporary patches, and some of the lights still flickered occasionally. But Admiral Nara had insisted on meeting here, in the same room where just days ago the alien commanders had doubted human commitment. Now those same commanders sat around the table in complete silence, staring at the three humans who had returned as if seeing them for the first time. Captain Minho looked exactly the same as before, calm, polite, and unremarkable. Chief Engineer Yuna was reading another technical manual. Tactical Officer Jiwan made notes on her tablet. The only difference was that everyone now knew what these quiet humans were capable of. Admiral Nara was the first to speak, her voice barely above a whisper. 10,000 ships gone, how is that possible? Captain Minho looked up from the damage reports he had been studying. The Vorthak chose to threaten our friends. We could not allow that. But how? Commander Threk buzzed, his usual anger replaced by something that might have been fear. My sensors recorded weapons that should not exist, energy signatures that break the laws of physics. Human physics work differently than yours, Chief Engineer Yuna said without looking up from her manual. We have had more time to figure out the universe. Speaker Vel's 6 eyes blinked rapidly. More time? Humans have only been spacefaring for a few hundred years. My people have traveled the stars for millennia. You have traveled between stars, Captain Minho corrected gently. Humans have traveled between dimensions, between realities, between possibilities that other species did not know existed. The room fell silent again as the implications sank in. The humans were not just more advanced, they were operating on levels of science that the rest of the galaxy had never even imagined. Why did you hide this? Admiral Nara asked. Why pretend to be a small, harmless species? Captain Minho was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. Admiral, what would have happened if we had arrived in the galaxy 50 years? Ego-flying ships like the Indomitable? Nara thought about it. If humanity had revealed such overwhelming power from the beginning, every other species would have either attacked them out of fear or surrendered immediately. The delicate balance of galactic civilization would have collapsed. You would have been seen as conquerors, she said slowly. Exactly. So we built smaller ships, normal ships, ships that looked like what everyone expected. We joined the galactic community quietly. We made friends. We proved that despite our capabilities, we could be trusted. And if the Vorthak had not attacked? Commander Threk asked. Would you have kept your true nature secret forever? Chief Engineer Yuna looked up from her manual for the first time. The Indomitable was built for one purpose, to protect our friends if they were ever threatened by something they could not handle alone. We hoped we would never need to use her. Tactical Officer Jiwan added quietly. Earth has 7 more ships like the Indomitable, but we really hoped one would be enough. 7 more ships? Admiral Nara felt her heart skip a beat. If one human vessel could destroy an entire fleet, what could 8 of them do? They could probably conquer the entire galaxy in a matter of days. Why are you telling us this now? She asked. Because secrets between friends are poison, Captain Minho replied. You have seen what we can do. Now you need to understand who we are. He stood up and walked to the viewing port, looking out at the debris field that had once been the mightiest fleet in galactic history. Humans learned long ago that power without restraint leads to horror. We have the ability to take whatever we want, go wherever we please, do whatever we choose, but that does not mean we should. So what do you want? Speaker Vel asked. Captain Minho turned back to face the assembled aliens. The same thing we have always wanted. To be part of something larger than ourselves, to have friends among the stars, to help protect the good things in the universe. And if we had refused your friendship? Commander Threk asked. If we had told you to leave our space when you first arrived? Then we would have left, Minho said simply. And when the Vorthak came, you would have faced them alone. The weight of that statement settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Without human intervention, every species represented here would now be dead or enslaved. The Vorthak fleet would have been unstoppable. Admiral, Nara stood up slowly. Captain Minho, I need to ask something, and I need you to answer honestly. Of course. Are humans the most powerful species in the galaxy? Captain Minho was quiet for so long that Nara wondered if he was going to answer at all. Finally, he spoke. Admiral, humans are not the most powerful species in the galaxy. We are the most powerful species in this dimension. There are others. Beings that exist in different layers of reality. Entities that work with forces we are only beginning to understand. The universe is much stranger and more dangerous than any of us know. And you protect us from these things too? She asked. When necessary. Usually they ignore species that have not developed dimensional technology, but sometimes, he shrugged. Let us just say that the Indomitable and her sister ships stay busy. Chief Engineer Yuna closed her manual and looked around the table. The important thing to understand is that humanity does not want to rule the galaxy. We want to be part of it. We want our friends to be safe and free to choose their own paths. But you could rule us all, Commander Threk pointed out. If you wanted to. Yes, Captain Minho admitted. But wanting to rule others is a sickness that humanity cured long ago. Power is only useful if it protects the things you care about. Tactical Officer Jiwan looked up from her tablet. Captain, we are receiving a priority transmission from Earth. Put it through. Ambassador Do-hyun's face appeared on the conference room's communication screen. He looked tired but relieved. Captain Minho, I trust everything went according to plan. The Vorthak fleet has been neutralized, Minho reported. No Allied casualties. The Indomitable is ready to return to patrol duties. Excellent. And our friends? Captain Minho looked around the table at the alien commanders. I believe our friends understand the situation now. Do-hyun nodded. Good. Please inform them that Earth values our alliance greatly, and we hope this incident has strengthened the bonds between our peoples. The transmission ended, leaving the room in thoughtful silence. Finally, Admiral Nara spoke. What happens now? Now, Captain Minho said, sitting back down, we continue as before. Humanity will keep contributing to galactic civilization. We will participate in trade, diplomacy, cultural exchange. The only difference is that you now know we can protect our friends when they need protection. And the Indomitable will return to her regular duties, patrolling the dimensional barriers, watching for threats that most species cannot detect, keeping the galaxy safe in ways that most people will never know about. Commander Threk's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. How many other species know about your true capabilities? A few, Chief Engineer Yuna replied. Species that have proven themselves trustworthy over decades of friendship. The knowledge is shared carefully, only with those who need to know. And why do we need to know? Speaker Vel asked. Captain Minho smiled for the first time since the Yao battle. Because after what you have seen, you would spend the rest of your lives wondering and worrying. It is better that you understand the truth. Which is that humanity will always be your friend, no matter how powerful we become. That we will always choose cooperation over conquest. And that as long as we exist, species like the Vorthak will never again threaten the peaceful peoples of the galaxy. As the meeting ended and the various commanders prepared to return to their ships, Admiral Nara felt a strange mixture of relief and awe. The galaxy was a much safer place than she had realized, protected by friends who possessed unimaginable power but chose to use it only for defense. Outside the Starcleaver's viewing ports, the small human frigate Indomitable waited patiently to escort the Allied fleet home. She looked ordinary again, harmless and unremarkable. But now everyone knew the truth that lay hidden beneath her modest appearance. The humans had asked why they only sent one ship. Now the answer was clear. They only sent one ship because one ship was all they needed, and in the vast darkness between the stars, 7 more ships just like her continued their silent watch, protecting a galaxy that slept peacefully, never knowing how close it had come to conquest, and never knowing that humanity stood guard against threats that existed beyond imagination. The galaxy was safe, and it would remain safe as long as humans chose to be its protectors rather than its rulers. In the end, that choice made all the difference.